Okay, so now that we've got the image there and I know that I can easily add in these sections that I missed, like that little, what is it, a kitchenette or something, and the unit at the back, which probably isn't necessary, but I think it's a nice thing to have, and we could even look at doing the rest of the site later as well. Before I do those things though, I'm going to skip ahead to put in a ceiling because that's something that you'll all need before long. And I'm going to have a look at my section just to make it clear to you what I'm working with in terms of the heights particularly. So we've got there obviously ground floor at 0 and level 1 is 3,500. So looking at the document here, you can see ceiling height is 2,800. So you should have some awareness of your heights before you go putting in something like a ceiling. And so there, if level 1 was 2.5 metres, for example, I'd have a problem. So I'm making sure that that level is above the ceiling height. I'm not going to try and bring that down just yet. I'm going to do my ceiling first. So looking at the views in the project browser, which of those views you can see there do you think might be good for making a ceiling? So which one? Well, the section is good to see the heights, so it is good to think about that, but yeah, you're right, the ceiling plan is the best one. So we've got there the ground floor ceiling plan, not level 1. The ceiling is closer to level 1, but we won't see the ceiling in the level 1 ceiling plan. We'll see it in the ground floor ceiling plan because that is looking up towards the ceiling. So that's the first step, making sure you get the right view to make your ceiling. And then on the architecture tab, you have the ceiling tool. It's fairly easy to use in a space like this because they're nice rectangular boxes. And for many interiors that will be the case. So if I click on the ceiling tool, then you'll see it will simply highlight each of those spaces. And I'll show you how long it would take for a space like this. 1, 2, 3, done. They're my ceilings.
What do you do if you've got different ceiling heights?
Yeah, then you've got to do something more. So, yeah. But that's going to give me a simple ceiling in each of those spaces. I didn't even think about the height because I'm going to come back and adjust that now.
You even didn't pick up the interior wall.
Well, I did it automatically. So that's what I'm showing you. If it's a simple space like this, it is automatic. So I'll just show you again what happened. When I clicked on ceiling, then hovering there, you can see it highlights in red when it detects a room. Now, if I go to level 1 ceiling plan and try to do the same thing, ceiling, you can see then, well, it's actually working, but I'm going to just change a setting so that it doesn't work anymore. I'm going to make this ceiling much higher. I'm going to make it 3.5 metres. Exactly. Yeah, and that's what may happen with your own spaces if you've done something different. And there's nothing wrong with that. It just means you need to make the ceiling differently. So automatic ceiling is great when it works, but if it doesn't, then you have sketch ceiling. And sketch ceiling is something you should all be able to work with because it works exactly the same as creating a floor boundary. So you can either draw lines or use pick walls and simply pick anything, any walls that you have already. Go over it. Oh, no, inside, on the inside face. Yep.
What do you do? I think I did it twice.
Yeah.
And it's telling me they're identical instances.
Yeah, so delete it, undo, and yeah, just go back a step, undo, and you should be right.
How do you know once you've created one?
You'll have a look in your section. Usually is the best way to see it. It's hard to see in your floor plan, in your ceiling plan even.
How do you have the second version?
With the level tool. So I'll, yeah.
So it should be so from the floor.
Yes. Yeah.
If a part of the city is a bulkhead, you have to do the ceiling bulkhead separately.
That's right. So you may have a couple of ceilings, or you might model in extra to make the ceiling thicker at a certain point. A couple of ways of doing it, but yeah, usually you need to do more.
Do ceiling first, and then later you do the bulkhead.
Exactly. Yeah, that's probably a
That
good
will
way.
be underneath the ceiling.
Yes,
layer.
but still, it's still considered a ceiling.
Okay.
And
How about overlap parts?
yeah, so you could use this ceiling tool for the main ceiling, and then where you've got a bulkhead that comes down, then use model in place, what we were using last week, and make an extrusion, but you'd still set that as a ceiling, so Revit knows it's a ceiling. And I'll show you how to do that. That's, yeah.
Can you change the thickness of ceilings easily? Like
Yep.
you do the levels, the actual floor level first, and then worry about
Yeah, so that's what I'm going to show you now. So yeah, so I'll finish this one,
sorry.
and then no, it's fine. So I'm going to have a look now in the section view again, so that you can see this ceiling's all the way up here. Now it happens to be on this level, but remember it's hosted by level 1, and that's what you need to remember with ceilings. That normally they'll be hosted by the level below, so level 1 here is controlling the height, not level 1 ceiling. And we can change that if we need to, but I wanted to just make it like that so you can see a few other things in a minute. This one, it makes more sense because ground floor, again, is hosting this ceiling. So if I move ground floor, that ceiling will move. And that makes complete sense because, again, we've got the ceiling height here specified from the ground. So what that means is now I can select any of these ceilings, just use control to select both of them, and then over in properties I can change the height offset from level to set the ceiling height to 2800 from ground floor. That's the way I want to measure it. And then we can maybe assume, because you don't have measurements, we have to assume, and I can say maybe, well, based on the type of building it is and other things I've done before in similar buildings, it might be about 500 from the ceiling surface there to the floor above. Maybe it's less, maybe it's more, but probably you can assume here 500 is not too bad. So at the moment it's 700. And then I'm going to just select level 1 then and change that height to 33, maybe 3200 actually, because 400 would still be enough, and 3200 probably is a good height for that level. And so this is one of the best things about Revit. The levels are pretty flexible. If you realise that's wrong, it's not a problem even after you've added in all the furniture and the other things on this floor to move these levels around. So notice how this ceiling has come down now with this floor though. And I've made a level for that ceiling, so I'm going to do this one a bit differently. I want this ceiling to come from, or to be measured from this level I've made for it. So what do you think maybe you could do there to make that ceiling sit exactly on the level that I've made for it and just stay there? If you look in properties, notice how it's got the level, and you can change that to anything. So I can change level 1 there to level 1 ceiling. And then what do you think the height offset from the level should be? If I want it to sit exactly on that level instead of floating up above it. Right, you can just make that 0. It doesn't need to have a height. So if I make it 0, then now it's sitting on that level again, but this time it'll go with the level. So you've got two ways of doing it. You can do the ceiling measured from the floor below, or you can put a ceiling right onto a level and set the height that way.
And you do that using the ceiling tool?
Yeah, it's all in the properties. So if I select the ceiling, then you can see over here you've got the level, so you can change it to a different level anytime.
Okay, so you've got to put the ceilings in before you change the thickness of the ceiling.
Oh, well, that's the next thing. So this is setting the height of the bottom of the ceiling. And then if you zoom in there, you'll see that automatically this ceiling is set to, it's about 57 mil.
So how did you,
So that's here in the type of ceiling. So it's just like a wall or a floor
but how did you get that there?
by making a ceiling.
Oh, so I do have to make a ceiling?
Yeah, to see it, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's got the thickness set automatically. So now if I select one of those ceilings, just like a wall or a floor or a roof, which we'll look at as well, edit type will give you the properties, and you can see then this one's 57 mil. And what I'd suggest with your own projects is that you leave that for now. Later on you can look at adjusting it, but for your preliminary presentations you probably won't need to change that. So just let it have the thickness that it starts with.
How do you do a ceiling that isn't flat?
That isn't flat. Eaves, well, eaves are different. That's part of the roof. No, that's right. Yeah, so that's a roof, which I'll do next.
If I just
Exposed eaves. Oh, that's even more complicated. So you've got to model it. Possibly. Yeah. I'll just be a
I'm
yeah.
using the house right now. I'm just working on the house that we started.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Does that mean you don't put the ceiling on the second floor?
No, you would have a ceiling there. So that would be under the roof. Oh, you want a raked ceiling, you mean? So you want a ceiling that's following the slope of your roof? You've got to model that. Yeah, I'll show you briefly. So, okay, so here, think about what I've done with the ceilings. I've got these two ceilings which I'll select.
Can we slow down for a second?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not keeping up. So I keep getting warnings whenever I go in to create a ceiling.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
So probably your levels. So you need to probably go back to the way you've done your levels. But like I said, you can go over the recordings I've done and that'll maybe clear up those things. So the recording I did last week. Yeah, your levels, this is what I did at the beginning. So your level is too low there. Level 1's too low. That's why you're getting the warnings. But because you're making your ceiling high, your ceiling will be higher than that.
But I measured it. Oh, okay.
So it should be a floor to floor. But I'll have a look at that in a minute anyway. I'll come over and have a look. So I just want to finish off showing you a bit more about ceilings. If you have a look at your ceiling plan again, or mine anyway, then you can see that the two ceilings there I've been looking at in section. Yeah, so again, probably just watch what I'm doing rather than trying to follow it on your computer. Just watch all the steps and then have a go at it afterwards. So, so here you can see these two ceilings are what I've been looking at in section, but I've got this ceiling down here that I haven't even been seeing in my section, and so a lot of the issues you'll find with ceilings are to do with the height of them, and you need to be capable of looking at that in different ways. So here, in the other section, I can see now that my remaining ceiling also is at the original height. So again, level 1 here needs to be above those ceilings, and you set the height of the ceiling if you're measuring from the floor below in properties over here. Okay, so if my level 1 is lower, then obviously this ceiling height would be lower as well. But in this case, I can bring that up to match what I've done for these other ceilings and make that 2800. Okay, so it does take a bit of getting used to, but once you've done a few ceilings, and it's really mostly to do with thinking about your levels at the same time as making your ceilings. So you've got to know the height of your levels so that when you make your ceilings, and this goes right back to the setup at the beginning, so what we did last week, and if you're on top of your levels, then as you make your ceilings, you can have a look at the height over here and make that lower if you need to. 2400 is the minimum usually, and that will make it easier to make your ceilings as well. And then very last thing, I'll finish this video up in a second, but you know that it's worked when you go to a ceiling plan and you can then place in a certain kind of family that I'm sure you'll all want to use in the end. Lights. So here I'm just going to grab any old light. This one will do. And oh, that's a strip light. That's a bad example actually, so I'll get a different light. A ceiling light. I'm going to make sure it's something kind of ceiling, and one that I'm not going to use later. So there we go. Okay, so if you can see a light when you are in your ceiling plan and you can place a light there, then your ceilings are working. Outside the building, I can't put a light because there's no ceiling there. So that's a really good test to make sure it's working. But you should know even before that, mainly by looking in your section, you should always be able to find your ceilings there. At first, it might be difficult for you to see the ceilings in your ceiling plans. Actually, very last thing, if you wanted to select the ceilings in your ceiling plan, do you know the option key? What option key were you using before to select things that you couldn't see the edge of? Yeah? Or on your keyboard? What's the main option key for Revit to get different options? So we went through this a few times in the beginning. Remember using tab? So tab is your main option key in Revit. So if I hover there, I can't see the ceiling very clearly because the edge lines up with my wall. But if I move to the edge, I know the ceiling's there. Now I'm going to press tab and I can select it in that view.